Do you think that in the past, say 5,000 years ago, when you and I met then as well, and I'm sure I had a conversation with you, yes, learned something from you. Yes, exactly. There were other types of recording devices back then. Do you think that back then it was more that consciousness was a given? It was just part of, it was an assumption almost, that there is an integration. We are connected to our environment. We do have to cultivate awareness of our environment to learn about ourselves. Mm-hmm. But now it's a choice. Now it's so easy in our, in preparation for this interview, I was thinking about, we live in this very industrialized, postmodern world where there are so many ways to distract ourselves from that inner work. Yes. And to actually undertake that inner work is a choice. Mm-hmm. It is a practice of free will. And perhaps that's where that's where we can really recognize and acknowledge the human free will, to develop that connection. Perhaps that's where the opportunity is.
Yes, I like that. I think that that human culture has gone through phases in the past that were characterized by a strong degree of spiritual renaissance, and it's gone through phases that were far more fear-driven and ego-driven. And I'm not really sure that humanity is evolving that much. Sometimes I mean, I don't know. These are profound mysteries, but I tend to think of the earth and human incarnation as a little red schoolhouse, so to speak, kindergarten through 6th grade. Don't criticize the little red schoolhouse for not evolving into a university. That it is what it is, and it serves its purpose, and that beings reach a certain stage of evolution, and they come to the earth and learn certain lessons, and then they graduate and they move on to other levels.
To high school?
To high school.
High school is another planet, yeah. Maybe?
Wings and harps, or
yes.
Another planet, or the astral world, or
like sort of like Dante's hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh wow, that's a fascinating way.
It doesn't start here and it doesn't end here. That's pure metaphysics. But the relevance of what I just said is the idea that, responding to your question about consciousness now, versus in previous times, I think we're living now in a very very wonderful time to be alive as far as that goes, because there is a spiritual renaissance that is happening now. In fact, it's I think really just getting underway with Neptune entering Pisces, and that's always an exciting time.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And you're at the forefront of that.
Well, I'm certainly riding the wave,
I do want to talk about, and the one thing I was so looking forward to talking to you about was evolutionary astrology, yes. Of course, because that is really how you have created a very, very fiery trail. Like when I think of you and the contribution you've made to our field, it is evolutionary astrology, and how you've helped us to understand the soul's journey as beyond just this moment.
Yes.
And that's why earlier I was joking with you and I said, oh yeah, 5,000 years ago, we were there. And I got that from your workshop, yes. Actually. Mm-hmm. So tell me about evolutionary astrology. How did you start in that? How were you introduced to that? Is that something that you certainly developed it. Do you consider yourself one of the founders of that school of astrology?
Yeah, that would be fair. Evolutionary astrology, it's a complicated term. I think of it myself as a generic umbrella term, like we might speak of Hellenistic astrology or psychological astrology, and under those banners there are many different schools and perspectives. The specific term evolutionary astrology, so far as I know, was originated by a gentleman by the name of Raymond Merriman, who was the former president of ESART, International Society for Astrological Research. He wrote a book, actually truly a rather obscure book, in terms of its impact, titled it Evolutionary Astrology, and he came out in 1977. I don't know of any previous use of the term. Raymond, I've spoken with him. He doesn't lay a particular claim to the term, but I think he probably was the first to publish it. I used the term myself very commonly and widely in my first book, came out with Bantam Books in '84, The Inner Sky. Certainly I kind of laid claim to the term then. I was not actually aware of Ray Merriman's work at the time, but evolutionary astrology just seemed like a naturally descriptive term. It wasn't a copyrightable term in my own mind or anything like that. It's just kind of what we're doing. And Jeffrey Wolf Green, his evolutionary Pluto, the evolutionary journey of the soul.
Classic.
Yeah, brilliant book, and it came out in 1987, and he became very identified with the term evolutionary astrology. Now we have, Merriman's work, my work, Jeff's work, all had the same philosophical DNA, that we're all imagining that the soul evolves through successive incarnations, using reincarnational theory, and that it seems self-evident to us all that astrology must reflect that. There's really almost no logical way around it. Once you accept reincarnation, that the chart will have something to do with what you're doing here, and that has something to do with what you did in the past that got you here and how to go forward. And that's the essence of it right there, essentially the collision of ancient metaphysics and modern psychological astrology. That put those two together and you've got evolutionary astrology. But the technical procedures that Ray Merriman wrote about in his book and that I read about in my work and that Jeff Green writes in his are very different. I would think of them as more complementary than contradictory, but entirely different perspectives. So Jeff's book and my book came out in the 80s, as I said, and since then we've each run schools and have lots of students, and I've had something like 650 folks go through my apprenticeship program, and many of them write their own books, and of course inevitably, and I delight in this, joy of the teachers, have the students go further and see further and do better. I have nothing but delight in that. And so the point is that evolutionary astrology is a big part of the modern astrological scene, and it's very diverse.